Hello readers, I'm Amy, here to bring you part 2 of my not reading list. My first video was on authors that I will never read, which that's not to say never ever read, because my tastes have changed a lot since I've started doing booktube and bookstagram. So you read a lot of books, your tastes change, but probably never going to read. And then this list, I think this whole thing was actually initially inspired by Emily Fox, because I think a year or two ago she'd done a never reading again list of authors. So today is my list. These are some authors that I will never again read, that I will not be reading in the future. They're authors that I have previously read, and for reasons that we're going to discuss, I'm just not going to pick them up again. So this list is way more extensive than what I'm going to talk about in this video. I deleted a lot of authors off of the list on my phone, just because a lot of them, if you have a bunch of literary fiction authors, well, yeah, that I'm probably not going to read them. Some of the authors on my list just weren't that interesting to talk about, so shortened it up, and also that way this video isn't an hour long. But I'm going to go ahead and start with Shirley Jackson. And just a reminder, don't totally hate me for this video. But Shirley Jackson, I've read We Have Always Lived in a Castle. I read that in college. I didn't really get it. I read Haunting of Hill House, I think last year, maybe the year before. And this gets into haunted houses in general as a trope are just really tricky for me. Haunted house movies, I tend to like the more psychological ones because the physical haunted houses just tend to have a lot of effects that are just way too creepy for me. I remember, I don't know what movie it was, but there's a figure coming up out of the bed, or there's creepy people standing behind you on the screen. Not here for it. So haunted house movies, I think I'm a little more into psychological horror. The first American Horror Story season, Murder House, was pretty good. It was a little much for me at times, but that's kind of where haunted houses are for me as movies. When it comes to haunted house books, I think my taste is actually opposite. Books don't scare me nearly as much as movies. Something about that visual media is a lot more jarring for me. So books, I tend to want to do more physical haunted houses and less spiritual or psychologically haunted houses. So these two books by Shirley Jackson just weren't it for me. They were really slow in plotting. Nothing really ever jumped out, and I'm eh. So probably not going to pick up Shirley Jackson again. That said, I do think that The Lottery is a really good story. I do enjoy that, but just not an author I'm interested in picking up again. Next one is Martha Wells. Now, her robot series has been so popular in the last year or two, and I did pick up the first book and I finished it. And I don't know what it was, just not for me. The robot's humor was just not hitting it for me. Nothing in the world of the first book was really explained, and I like having explanation. So just, it wasn't to my taste. I do want to explore robots more in sci-fi. I do still need to finish the Robots series from Isaac Asimov, but I have really been enjoying that. So I don't know what it was. Martha Wells' humor just isn't my kind of humor in books, I guess. Also, I think, if I remember correctly, the robot was talking a lot about soap operas and stuff, and I don't know. It just wasn't funny for me. Then Sally Rooney. Now, this one was actually just reminded by a story on Instagram posted by Hillary from Melted Books. Let me find it here. So she just finished reading Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And on the bottom of her review, it says, "It's very difficult for me to read books that portray friendships where love and respect is lacking, which is one of the reasons why I despised Normal People by Sally Rooney." And that just kind of sums it up for me. When I read Normal People initially, I enjoyed it well enough. I thought that the writing was good and I was invested in seeing what happened to the characters, but as the years have gone by since reading that book, the more and more I think on it, the more I feel like I didn't really enjoy it that much because, like Hillary said, there's just no respect in that relationship. And it just, after time, it's left kind of a sour taste in my mouth, so I just don't think I'm ever going to read Sally Rooney again. Also, she kind of rides that line of literary fiction where, again, it's really slow and nothing significant really happens. So, not interested in picking her up. Riley Sager. Riley Sager has gotten a lot of conversation the last couple of years. Hillary, I'm sorry, I know you love Riley Sager. The first book I read, I don't even remember what it was called. It was the pink one. We'll go by colors. The pink one. I enjoyed that until the end, where it's like, that's just not where I was expecting the ending to go. And a lot of times, having an unexpected ending is really great. And this one, I'm just like, that's how it ends? Okay. And then I read the blue one. Is that The Last Time I Lied or something? And it was good, but it was too long. Final Girls was enjoyable enough, but it was too long. It was just kind of this trend of taking too much time to tell a story that I think could have been shortened. It's like you think that it's going to end, and then it goes on a little further, and you think it's going to end, and then it goes on a little further. And then he had the green one, the Haunted House book, come out, which I'm like, not sure on haunted houses. They're really 50-50 for me. And then the last two books he's come out with, I've just heard absolutely nothing positive about them. And at this point, it's like I'd rather spend my time on other authors. When it comes to horror, like Grady Hendrix is my guy. Realize Final Girl Support Group was not very popular, but I loved it. So we all have our own tastes. Then Louise ONeill. Louise ONeill is an interesting one. I had been wanting to read her for years, and I just hadn't picked up any of her books, but I would read the summaries and it's like, this sounds super interesting, I should put it on my TBR. Wasn't getting around to it. Finally saw a really great review of maybe a couple of her books from Victoria, from what Victoria read, and it's like, this is my reminder, I need to pick up one of her books. And I had like 2 or 3 on hold at the library, and I picked up at least 2 of them. But it's like I would read a couple of chapters, and it was too much for me. As I was saying earlier with the haunted house thing, like visually things are usually a lot scarier for me. With Louise ONeill, the books were just absolutely terrifying. I guess another example of this is Handmaid's Tale. I love the Handmaid's Tale book. The Handmaid's Tale show I can't watch because it's just very emotionally overwhelming for me as a TV show, and that's how I felt about the books. The books were really violent and visceral, and she had really good points to make, but I can already tell that her stuff is just going to be way too emotionally overwhelming for me, so not going to pick up her books again. Next up, we have Richard Matheson. He is the one who did I Am Legend. I saw the movie as a kid, and as an adult, I learned that movie is actually about vampires. Or the story is about vampires, not zombies. And that did not come across at all in the movie. The movie was totally zombies. You cannot convince me otherwise. And of course, like, the movie's not exactly like the book. But I picked up the book. I wanted to read the story behind the movie. And I don't know if me not picking up this author has to do with his storytelling or has to do with my emotional situation at the time. Because at the time, I was really burned out on social work. At the time that I read this story, or I think I only got halfway through the story, within a week, I had ended up quitting my job and working from home, totally burned out. Having panic attacks was not a good time. So me not wanting to read this author could very much have to do with my emotional state at the time that I read him. But I remember getting partway through I Am Legend, and it's doing weird things. Like, not only is this person completely alone in the world and trying to fend for himself, which really was not good for my brain at that particular time, But I also remember that he was like sexualizing the female zombies, which just felt really weird to me. So, a couple of different reasons that I'm not going to pick up Richard Matheson again. I have Mary Kabika. Mary Kabika is one of those who does what I call grocery store books, where like you find this author a lot in the grocery store in the mass market section with like Mary Higgins Clark and James Patterson. That's generally where I've tended to see her. And I saw her name around, seemed like she was a pretty interesting author, and I don't remember where I was flying to, but I was on an airplane and I had picked up that book. And for one thing, the writing was not great. Like, I have a specific taste in writing. I like more complex writing than I feel like she offered in that book. And I don't even remember which book it was. I'll know it when I see the cover, and you'll see right here. But besides the writing, I was maybe a quarter to a third of the way into that book, and I already knew exactly how the story was going to go. I knew exactly how it was going to end. I went ahead and flipped to the end, and I'm like, yep, exactly as I predicted. And I'm not usually that good at predicting where a book is going, so if I can tell the entire plot of the book from the first third, it's just not going to be an interesting read for me, so won't be picking up her books again. Okay, lighting may have changed. Hopefully it's not too bad. I had a battery issue. Anyways, very last author that I want to talk about. Please don't hate me too much for this, but an author that I will never read again is Virginia Woolf. Now, I tried. I tried Room of One's Own. I tried reading Orlando. I tried reading Mrs. Dalloway. Virginia Woolf is just not for me. I appreciate her as a person. I appreciate what she stood for and what she means to the history of feminism and feminist literature, but Mrs. Dalloway with stream of consciousness, which is a writing style that I really struggle with. It's not for me. I've tried a couple different stream of consciousness books. Orlando was like that super classic style of writing where with classics, like some classics are written in a more kind of accessible way and some are not. It depends on your reading tastes and everything. Like I love Dracula. You know I love Dracula. My husband thinks that the writing is so dull. So classics really hit and miss for everyone, I think, when it comes to writing, and Orlando just, I was not understanding anything that she was saying. And then Room of One's Own, I believe I tried as a Kindle book and an audiobook, both, and from what I remember, I think it was a little more stream of consciousness again, but the writing just wasn't it for me. I wasn't comprehending what was on the page. So unfortunately, Virginia Woolf is on this list of authors that I will never read again. And this list, unlike the authors I will never read, which are really authors that I might read if circumstances and tastes change, this is a list of authors that I will actually never ever read again. So please let me know down below who are some authors that you're just never going to pick up again. So please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media, even after this heartbreaking video, and I will see all of you in the next one. Bye, friends.